but we're gonna talk about how to buy a house. The first house I bought, I was 13 years old. And so my mom is a real estate genius. She's been a realtor for 46 years, owns more houses than shoes because she says no one will rent your shoes, but they'll rent your house. And so I was 13, this person passed away, and he ends up leaving my brother and I a lump sum of money, and I was homeschooled. And so my mom set down 3 options: low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Low risk was we give it to her, she uses it as a down payment, and then she gives us 10% interest on our money. Medium risk was we partner with her, we give her the down payment, we get 25% of the property each, she gets 50% of the property. High risk was we put it in the stock market, so risky. So we ended up going with the medium risk. So we partnered with her, we bought the house, still own it today. There's 6 years left on the mortgage, and so eventually it'll be paid for. And then when I was 18, I bought my second house. So this is my favorite strategy. Parents partnering with their kids. So I was 18, my dad co-signs for the mortgage. So he was a teacher, co-signs for the mortgage, he gives me the 5% down. I buy a house with a basement suite. And so the plan was I'd live upstairs, rent out the basement. But I found out that I could still buy it with 5% down, rent out the upstairs, rent out the basement, and still live at my mom's house. So I'm like, hey, sweet, let's do that. It'll make $500 a month over and above the mortgage. I ended up giving that to charity for the first couple of years for the church that I was going to run their youth ministry. And I still own that today. So who pays rent here? You pay rent? Okay. How much do you pay for rent?
Only 400.
400? Okay.
Yeah, that's like a basement suite.
Okay, sweet. Thank you for answering my question.
Oh.
Wow. Sweet.
And so you pay $400 a month for rent. Does anyone pay less than that? You pay less than that?
Zero.
Zero? Zero?
Zero.
Zero. Okay.
Yeah. I own my house mortgage free, so.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to show you how you can buy a house for less than $400 a month. Actually, less than zero too. So we're going to use a $350,000 house. Okay, so it's going to have a basement suite. It's going to have a garage. Okay. Our mortgage is $1,900 a month. Our property taxes is $200 a month. Our insurance is $100 a month, and then we have to pay utilities. So it's about $500 a month. And then I always like to budget for repairs because you're gonna have to replace a window, a fridge, something. So I like to do $100 a month. So your total payment is $2,800 a month. And then, so we got $2,800. Then we're going to live in the basement. Oh, sorry, we're gonna live in the basement. So it's a 2-bedroom basement suite. We're gonna rent out the upstairs because that's the most expensive part. We're gonna try and live affordably. So we're gonna rent out the upstairs. Rent is about $1,900 right now if they wanna rent a 3-bedroom upstairs suite. And they're paying 60% of the utilities. So they're paying $200 for the utilities. You're gonna live downstairs. You're gonna rent out 1 bedroom. We're gonna rent out that bedroom for $500. And then you're also gonna rent out the garage. So sorry, you're gonna have to scrape your car off for a while because we're just trying to live affordably. Rent out the garage, $200. Yep.
Look, what would people rent the garage out for though?
Storing their Corvette, storing just storage. If I could only buy garages, I would only buy garages because you don't have to deal with toilets. You don't have to, they just write you a check for 12 months and they go, thank you for letting me store my Corvette there. Great question. So the total rental income between the 3 places is $2,800. But wait, that's how much it costs to own the property. And we're living in the basement. We're living in one of the rooms, we're renting the other room to my friend, your friend. That's pretty fun. But it gets better because you own the house. So every month you make payments on that loan and that loan goes down. So over 25 years, you'll eventually pay it off. Over the 5 years, you'll pay off a total of $30,000, which divided by 5 years is $500 a month. So you're living for free and you're paying off $500 a month. Now let's compare it to a cheap condo. It's like, hey, you know, I don't want to buy a big expensive house. Okay, let's go for $100,000 condo, as cheap as it gets. Our mortgage is $550. Our taxes, $100. Our insurance, because we still have to get insurance for our couch and all that stuff. Utilities, in a condo, a lot of the utilities are covered by your condo fees, but you still have electricity usually, so it's about $100. And then you have condo fees. So your condo fees go to maintain the building because you only own a little portion of the whole condo, and so everyone's got to chip in like $100 a month to maintain it. So your total cost to live in that cheap condo is $990 if you're just living there by yourself, so $1,000. But if it's a 2-bedroom condo, we're gonna rent out one of the rooms to our friend, we're gonna rent it for $550 because we get the whole place to ourselves, we can get a little bit more income. Our cost is still $450 a month. The other one is free, but we are paying off the mortgage. But because our mortgage is smaller, we get a smaller amount of mortgage pay down. So instead of $500, we're getting $150 a month. So the total cost to you is still $350, which isn't terrible, like $350 cheaper than rent. But it's not free and it's not paying you $500 a month to live there. So the difference between the $500 and the $350 is actually $1,100. Yeah. So my wife is a mortgage broker. She became one. I was fasting one day, and at the end of the fast, we're like, oh, you should become a mortgage broker. Oh, thanks. Great idea. To qualify for a mortgage, the bank will take 39% of your income. Sometimes they'll take 44% of your income, and they'll allow that. So if you make however much, they'll just take that, and that can go towards your payment.
It's tight.
Yes. Yeah.
That's tight.
But I'll show you how to buy a house without needing to have a job. Then there's another account, which I'm sure Andrew's probably talked about. It's called the First Time Home Savers account. So Andrew's probably talked about RRSPs and how you put money in there.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
We just started budgeting.
Oh, okay. So RRSPs, if I make money, I pay taxes. But if I take some of that money and I put it in a RRSP, I don't have to pay taxes on that money that I put in there. But then when I take it out, then I have to pay taxes. But the government just came out with this new rule where if I put money into the First Time Home Savers account, it reduces my taxes. And then when I take it out, I don't have to pay that tax back. Sweet, okay. So that's a great program. So don't put money in your RRSPs to start, put it in this First Time Home Savers account.
Rather than a TFSA.
Rather than a TFSA, because if you put it in a tax-free savings account, any money that it goes up, it's tax-free. But it doesn't reduce your taxes. But Andrew will cover that. But how do you get free real estate? So like the first house that I bought with my dad, it's free. He gave me the 5% down, he qualified for the mortgage. So how do we do that? This could be family that partners with us, grandparents that partner with us, and we create a business plan. We go, look, I'm gonna buy this legally suited house. I'm gonna live in the basement. I'm gonna rent out one of the rooms. I'm gonna live for free and I get $500 a month. Would you be willing to give me my inheritance early, partner with me to set me up for the future so that we can buy this house today? And so you just create a business plan. It can be just a little page and just, hey, here's my plan. A little bit more about mortgages. So when you buy a house, it's a 25-year mortgage. So you get 25 years to pay it off. If you ever got a car loan, usually it's 5 years, but you get 25 years. But sorry?
Aren't they doing 35 years now? Or 30?
You can get 30, yeah. So the longer instead of like if I do a 15-year mortgage, my payment's higher. If I do a 25-year mortgage, my payment's cheaper. And so with a mortgage, you pay tons of interest in the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. So your first 5 years on that $350,000 house, we're only paying off 30 grand, but we're making like a $2,000 a month payment. So really we're paying like 100,000, but only 30 grand of that is actually goes into our pocket. It's called front-loaded interest. It just means you're paying more interest in the beginning, but then at the end of the mortgage, you're paying more off on the principal. Because the bank is smart, which is why they're big. And they're like, oh, the average person moves every 4 years. Let's put all the interest at the beginning of it. And then they're gonna move and they're gonna go get another mortgage and then they're gonna pay more interest at the beginning. And so if you actually do the math, if I buy a $400,000 house, Manuel, if you wanted to buy a $400,000 house, but you had to pay $800,000 to do it, would you pay double what it's worth? No? So when you get a mortgage, 25-year mortgage, $400,000, it actually costs you $800,000 by the time the mortgage is up. Because just the way the interest works. And then at the 15-year mark, so you've all seen those graphs, and it goes like this, and it shows you this. So you've got year 1 and year 25. At year 15, that's when you start paying off the same amount of principal as interest. But at the beginning, you're paying more interest than principal. So if you can get a property to 15 years, basically just keep it. Never just because you're paying so much more off on the principal. Now, when you buy a property for 5% down, so that is the minimum you can put down on a property is 5%. But to put that little amount down on a house, the government charges you fees, insurance. So if I put 5% down, the government charges me 4%. So basically, goodbye to my down payment. I will pay that fee all day long because every house you move into, you can buy for 5% down. So you move into one house, rent out the upstairs, rent out the garage, rent out the room to your friend, live for free. And then when you go to buy the next house, you bring your friend with you and you rent out the full basement. So I get the $500 for the one room, but now I'm renting the full thing. So maybe I'm getting $1,500 for the basement. And so instead of living for free, I'm getting $1,000 more. But wait, I was living for free. So really, that property now gives me, wants to guess it, how much?
Oh, are you talking about money? Oh, okay.
Yeah. The property will, called cash flow, it will cash flow $1,000 and you're still paying off the mortgage. But wait, you're living in the next house. You're renting out the upstairs. You're living in the basement. You brought your friend with you. You're renting out the garage. You're living for free in that one too. And you get $500 more. I'll pay them. So,
I'm sorry, could you explain that one more time?
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You can erase that if you need to.
Oh.
If you need to use the whiteboard, you can erase that. We don't need it again.
Okay. So every house you move into, you can buy for 5% down.
Okay, yeah.
And so I live in one of the suites, and I'm living for free. We all got that part.
Okay, yeah.
Then when I move out,
So you're living in a different house, is what you're saying?
yeah, so we're on house number 2. So we move from house number 1. We're living down in the basement. It's a 2-bedroom, so we're living in one of them. We're renting out the other, and we're renting out the upstairs to someone. And then we move from this one to house number 2.
But you still own house number 1?
Still own house number 1. But instead of me living here, I just now rent out the full basement suite to someone else. And then I'm living in the 2-bedroom basement suite. I'm living in this one, renting out the room to my friend. I'm renting out the upstairs for $1,900. I was getting $500 a month income from renting out the room, but because I moved out of it, I can rent the full suite. So maybe I'm renting it for $1,200. But I was living for 0. So the difference between $500 and $1,200, I'm getting $700 a month over and above all of my expenses. But then I moved to property number 2, and I'm living for 0 because he's paying me $500 a month, and I'm renting out the garage for $200. So I've got positive $700 a month coming to my bank. I'm living here for 0, but remember, this mortgage is still getting paid down. Now Now this mortgage is getting paid down. Imagine if you did that 4 times.
Wait, are you allowed to do that? Like have multiple mortgages at once?
Yeah, to get a 5% mortgage, you have to live in it. It is the most commonly used way of mortgage fraud because people are like, oh, I'm gonna live in it. You have to live in it. It has to be your house.
So that first house that you used 5% down on, that you've moved out of, what happens to your CMHC? You're no longer living there.
You still get to keep the mortgage because your heart intent when you bought it was to live in it.
Oh.
Oh, you don't have to
Oh.
live in it. Good stuff.
Right.
Oh, okay. How long do you have to live in it?
All about the heart intent.
Oh, so if you like
This is my
live
forever
in
home.
it for like a month and then move to another house is fine.
Yeah. Well, no, you have to all about the heart intent.
Like, the government has to really come and investigate that, though, right? It's just,
Well,
because-
it doesn't matter because it's the heart intent. So you're allowed to do it. There's no investigation needed.
like it doesn't have to be enforced.
It's legal. What he's saying is legal.
It's still, oh, okay.
Because you initially bought the first house to live in it. If you only lived in it for a month, am I getting this right?
Mhm.
You only lived in it for a month, it doesn't matter. Your initial intent was to live in it.
Mm.
Then you bought another house, now you're living in it.
No,
So it's legal. If he bought the house with the intent to and said he had the intent to live in it but never lived in it, that's illegal.
nice. Okay.
And so the nice thing about living in the basement suite is, hey, by the time we're on our 3rd house, probably don't want to live in a basement suite anymore. Great. Now we can go buy another one and live upstairs and rent out the basement. And we have to think though, because we all want that nice new pretty house and we want that raise our family in it, we want that. So we have to think with these ones, they're our for now house. They're not our forever house. But these will help pay for our forever house. Because it brings in $700. And then when I move out of this one, how much income does it bring? 700. So now I've got 1,400. So when I do go to live upstairs and I rent out the basement for 1,200, I was getting 1,900, but I'm moving into a more expensive one. So maybe this has 3 bedrooms. And so then I live in one of them, rent out one, live in another, rent out that one, and got $1,400, getting 1,000. So yeah, you just keep living for fun. I lived in my mom's basement until I was almost 30. I had my own house for a while, but then when I broke up with my ex-fiance.
When were you married?
I
How were you still living in your mom's basement when you were married?
No,
Okay.
I got married, and then I put my future wife in one of my rentals, and then when I got married, I moved in.
Okay.
With her. But I owned 5 houses. Living in my mom's basement, owning 5 houses, is how I was able to get a wife while living in my mom's basement.
Your mom was very kind. Your mom was very kind.
Yeah, but I was here all the time, serving at church.
Do you find, is it challenging to find renters in Red Deer?
Good question. One of the city councilors said that we have a 0.7% vacancy rate, so less than 1%. So you post an ad, you get 40 people that want to rent it.
Wow.
And the nice thing about being here too is hey, how would you like to live together? That'd be fun. We'd have our own place. Cool. So it's easy to get roommates.
How does your wife feel about having roommates?
We rent out the basement.
Okay.
So our house. I live in a big house with lots and lots of rooms. That's a good song. and it only cost me $245 a month to live there.
Hmm.
So it's a $700,000 house, and I live there for $245. So I get the nice new pretty house, and I still get to live for cheap. And that's not even having my rentals pay for it. We added a basement suite into there, and we rent out the basement on Airbnb, and it brings in $2,500 a month. So instead of getting $1,200 for the basement suite, we do Airbnb and get more for it. And then over the 5 years on our mortgage, we pay off the mortgage. And so because it's a bigger value of a property, we pay off more on the mortgage, just like the condo was less. So over the 5 years, we pay off $100,000. And so we divide that by the 5 years, $1,600. And then I calculate my mortgage, my taxes, my insurance, my utilities. My payment's $4,345 a month to live there. My tenant's paying for it. Because I have the $2,500 for the basement, but I'm paying off my mortgage. So it's kind of like a forced savings account. So that's $1,650 a month. I'm taking it out of my one pocket, and I'm basically just putting it in my other pocket. I'm taking it out of my bank, but I'm putting it into my mortgage. So I don't lose it, it just pays off my mortgage. And so that's how I live for $245 a month. But I've bought in 7 properties for $10,000 or less, including a apartment building. So
That's the down, right? You're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I only ever think about how much it costs to buy a property for the total down payment. So there's 3 parts to every real estate purchase. There's the money, there's the people, and there's the deal. So the money is like the down payment, the mortgage, the people is your tenants, the realtor, your lawyer. And then the deal is, hey, a property where we're gonna live downstairs, we're gonna rent out the upstairs, we're gonna live for free. That's the deal. And we don't have to have all of the pieces of the puzzle. We can use someone else's money. So my wife and I, we just recently bought a house for $5,000. Who wants to buy a house for $5,000?
How do you buy a house for $5,000?
Okay. So it's called seller financing. So next time I'll show you pictures of what it looks like, but it's called seller financing. And so if you have bad credit or no credit, seller financing is a good way to buy a house without needing to talk to the bank. Sorry, Andrew. Basically what happens is the seller is playing banker for you. They've got money in there, and I just pay them the $1,900 that I would pay the bank.
Oh, so you paid the down in that way, like the person that's selling you the property, like the person you're paying every month?
Mhm.
Oh. But how do you find people like that are willing to do that? Does that happen often?
I maybe come across 4 a year,
Okay.
so they are rare, but they do happen. Another term for this is called rent to own, or agreement for sale. It just means we're skipping the bank and the seller's playing banker. So there was this house one time in Rocky Mountain House, and I used to have a giant chicken costume. I would dance around it with an open house sign that said, "I'm not chicken to sell your house." And this is in Rocky Mountain House, and this guy comes in. He's a tattoo artist. He had just started his business, had it for 1 year, just needed 1 more year of filing his taxes, and then he can qualify, because you have to be working for 2 years in order to qualify for a mortgage. And he's like, okay, I want to buy this house, but I have to buy it next year because I just don't qualify yet. Can we do seller financing? And the seller's like, yeah, I could wait a year if you pay me full price. Sure. Do you have $5,000 that you can give me to kind of secure it as like your down payment, and then you'll just rent it from me and then eventually buy it from me? He's like, no, but I have $5,000 on my credit card. So he did a cash advance on his credit card, paid 24% interest, gave that as his down payment. So he literally bought a house on a credit card. Yeah, you have a question about that?
Oh, because it's not through a bank, he's allowed to do that. Because a bank would never allow that.
You can borrow the down payment on a line of credit.
You can now?
Really bad credit score, this is how you can buy.
Yeah, because banks and stuff like that, they have like a kind of like a standard.
It's just
for,
the
like,
interest
who
is
can buy.
Oh, this is if you have bad credit.
If
Yeah.
you have bad
Oh, I thought
credit
this was
or.
like how to get bad credit.
Close, it sounds like it. My house on a credit card, look at this price teaching. I was talking to Anwar, I was telling him about that we're gonna be talking about how to buy a house on a
I can
credit
tell you how
card.
to get bad credit, Abby. Just don't pay anything. Don't pay off any of your debts. That'll give you bad credit.
But if we're not in a position to buy a house yet, how can we still live for free? You can do the same thing, just with your rent. So I live in one of the rooms and I rent out the other rooms to my friends. If it comes with a garage, rent out the garage for $200. But then if you are living for free, treat it like you're still having to pay the rent. And then just take that money and put it in your bank, and you're saving to buy a house. Because we still need a down payment typically to buy a house. So just treat it like that, and you'll get really far ahead. We'll talk about taxes. Yep.
So like, okay, if you put like a larger down payment on a house, like, how much lower would it like reduce your payments?
The funny thing is, if I put more of a down payment down, I pay higher interest. The government says, hey, if you put 5% down, you have to buy this insurance. So that's the 4%. But because the mortgage is insured, you're less risky, and so the bank gives you a cheaper interest rate. But if so to avoid that insurance, I have to put 20% down, and then I avoid the insurance. So it goes from like 4% interest to 5%. It's not a lot, but the payment works out pretty close, plus or minus $500. But I can either put 15,000 down or 60,000. It's like, okay, well, I rather buy 4 houses.
Yeah.
Because 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 20%. So I could buy 4 houses for the same as buying 1 with 20%.
Okay. So 2 questions, sorry. So the first one is, so like if you're doing like you're having the seller you're like buying the house through the seller?
Yep.
Wait, what was it? Never mind, yeah, sorry.
What was the second question?
Well, I forgot that one too.
Have some coffee, essay. Have a drink.
If it comes back, just stop me. That's what this is for. So when I buy this first house for $350,000, and then when I move to the next one, let's say it's 3 years till I move to the next one, because I was saving that $500 that I would be taking. I'm saving that every month so that I can get the second house. By the time I get to that second house, this will have probably gone up in value. And so maybe when I move out of it, this house is actually worth $400,000. And so then I buy the next one. And then let's say it's 20 years from now and I decide I want to sell that first house. I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna buy a place in Hawaii or something, but whatever your dream is, give it to homophobe. Let's say it's worth $450,000. So the first $50,000 is tax-free because you bought it for $350 and you lived there, and when you moved out, it was worth $400,000. So that difference between $350 and $400 is 50 grand. That's tax-free because the government says on your home, we're not going to charge you tax if the value goes up and you sell it. So it's your house, you live there. But then when I sell it in the future, and I moved out, it was worth $400,000, but now it's worth $450. They say, okay, that $50,000, we're going to charge you a little bit of tax on it, and so it's called capital gains. Mm-hmm. Capital gains is your friend because half of it is tax-free. Mm-hmm. So if I go to work tomorrow, half of my paycheck is not tax-free. They tax me on the whole thing. So the first $25,000 goes straight to your bank. That $50,000 goes straight to your bank. They just charge you tax on 25% or $25,000. So I could use some of that profit to pay the tax. But I don't want to sell my properties because if that first one's worth $400,000, the next one's worth $400,000, and then I get to the third one, I've been paying off the mortgage, been faithful. The value's gone up. There's equity in there. It's like every month I pay off that $500. That is my equity, taking out of one pocket, putting in the other. And so I can go back to the bank and I go, hey, I have this equity in my house. Can you give that to me? They go, yeah, sure, I can loan that to you. Is that fine? Yep, totally fine. And so I refinanced that when I was 18, bought that house, I refinanced it. So I got a bigger mortgage and I pulled out 30 grand. And then I used that on more real estate. So my house bought me another house. I didn't even have to save the down payment. My house, my tenants paid it off.
Wait, so your house was kind of like collateral for the bank in order to give you a bigger loan, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I bought it here, it had increased in value,
Increased in price,
and then I took that value out.
Oh.
And then that $30,000, is that taxed? No.
And they don't look at your income, they just look at the value of the house, just the.
They look at both.
You have to be able to afford the loan.
Oh.
Cause it's
Oh,
a loan
like
that they
pay-
give you and they use the
Oh.
house as collateral.
It's true, cause you gotta pay the loan off every month as well.
But our tenants are paying it, but we still have to show the bank that, hey, I can qualify for it, but my tenants are gonna pay it for me. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question about tenants. How do you find yourself some good tenants who are going to take good care of your home? Because if you get some tenants in there that put holes in the walls and that destroy your house, that just makes it less appealing for you.
Yeah, there's a Bible verse that says more sheep, more manure.
Yes.
So sometimes you gotta deal with some crap.
And that's what keeps my husband and I from wanting to get rental properties.
So I had this one lady one time, she had 2 chihuahuas and she said, can I put a doggy door in the door? I'm like, no, you can't cut a hole in my door. And she's like, well, I'm gonna do it anyways. Okay. And so I pictured like this nice little cute doggy door that like swings open. She took a jigsaw and just went, and oops. And then she stopped paying rent. I'm like, okay, so I gotta kick her out. So it's like $75 through the courts.
Yeah, and isn't it difficult to evict a tenant?
In Alberta, we've got pretty good rules. In BC, Ontario, it sucks.
Okay, and so how do you set up a contract with them? How do you make sure that you're protected?
I lost probably 3 months worth of rent where she didn't pay until I could get her out. But she's just in the basement suite. I still have the income from the upstairs, so I'm not paying for the full mortgage. And so yeah, got kicked out. It was like during Christmas, which is why it took a little bit longer. And then I repainted the place and rented it for more money than she was paying. So yeah, there's
But do you have how do you set up a lease agreement and that sort of stuff to protect yourself as a landlord?
it doesn't
Because I've
stop.
heard that tenants have more rights than the landlords do. Is that the case?
Yeah, but we're pretty landlord friendly here.
Okay.
So like I just go to this website and it asks you questions. How long is the lease for? How much are they paying in rent? What are their names? And then it creates the lease for me. And so then you just send it to them via electronic signature and they sign it. And then they give you a damage deposit. So when you move into a place, I collect 1 month's rent as damage deposit. So if they're living upstairs, they give me $1,900. I take that and I put it in a trust account.
You have to.
It just means I'm not gonna spend your damage deposit. That's only for used is if you do damages to my place. And they pay rent on the first. So they actually give me $1,900 and another $1,900. And so when she moved out, I had some of her damage deposit, which helped cover the rent that she didn't pay, fix the door that she cut into the wall.
And can you check their credit ratings?
Yep.
To see if they're a trustworthy person that will pay you monthly?
Yeah, I think it's like $30 you can do it, but just so discernment of the spirit. Trust your gut. If you're meeting with someone and they smell funny, it's like, hey, you said you don't smoke, but your jacket smells like smoke. So when you go to shake their hand, you go. And I actually find women have the best intuition when it comes to like, hey, is this guy trustworthy? Hey, he's a sleazeball or a slimeball. I don't trust him.
Okay.
The best tenants that you'll rent to are sometimes the ones you don't. Because if you put a bad tenant in there, it sucks. And then you can check the references too. It's like, hey, can I call your boss? Can I call your mom? Moms are the best ones to call.
Are they really? No way.
No.
Don't moms say no, or don't moms say like, no, he's really great, I want him out of my house?
The question I ask is, if you were me,
Uh-huh.
would you rent to them?
Oh. Oh.
And so if we get, I call houses boxes. If we get 4 boxes, so we get 1 box, 2 box, 3 box, 4 box. And each one is paying us $500 a month. So in this case, we're gonna have $700 a month cash flow, but if each one was paying $500 a month,
Just in cash flow.
just in cash flow, then we have $2,000 a month coming in. It's pretty awesome. Goes straight to our bank. And we have mortgage pay down. So each one paying off, say another $3,000. So we're actually, our net worth is increasing by $5,000 a month. By doing what? Collecting rent that they email transfer us. Unless they cut holes in your doors, and then you gotta go and call someone to fix it.
And it only costs $75 for an eviction?
Yeah, if you hire a lawyer, it's like $1,600, but you can
No
do
kidding.
it yourself.
How much harder is it to do it yourself than it is with your lawyer?
Same amount of work. You have to do it all, they just submit it for you.
The lawyers submit it for you.
Yeah. They just tell you what to do. It's like, okay, I could Google that. I'll walk you through it if ever happens. I'm on your team. And with those 4 boxes, we have called appreciation. So is $1 today worth $1 50 years ago? Does it have the same purchase power?
No.
Because there's no 1-cent candies anymore. There's no 5-cent candies anymore. They're 10-cent candies. And so that means eventually that house used to be 50 grand. Now it's 350 grand. So in 50 years, is that house still gonna be worth the same as it is today?
No.
No, it's gonna be worth more. So that's called appreciation. And now I have appreciation on 4 houses. And so I did the math one time. If you bought 4 legally suited houses, you thought you were gonna learn how to buy 1 house. You're buying 4, 5 actually, because those are gonna pay. That $2,000 cash flow is gonna pay for your nice pretty house. In 25 years, they'll be paid for. And so then you don't have that mortgage payment anymore. So you'll have $10,000 a month cash flow income coming to your bank every single month. And so in 25 years, AJ, how old will you be?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't know, it's more than that.
43.
43.
43?
Were you 17?
18.
Oh.
And so if the average person retires when they're 70, you already have $10,000 a month coming in, and you're 43.
And you probably still could live in your mom's basement for a while. Or Grammy's.
So do you have questions about anything we talked about today?
Yeah, that came back to me. So, let's say you have like no money to like even start, right?
Yep.
So like, you first need a down payment, right, to buy your first house?
Yep.
Like, do you just save up for the down payment and then you buy a house?
That's how most people do it.
Okay.
Is they'll save up for their down payment. Yeah, that's the typical way. Or you can there's a couple creative ways you can do it. You can partner with your parents, and so they give you the down payment. Because as long as one person is going to be living there, you can buy it for 5% down, even if it's parents or partners or business partners. As long as one person's living there, you can buy it for 5% down. Otherwise, they'd have to put 20% down. And so, for my dad and I, it was an investment for him. So we're buying this, we're renting it out, it has cash flow in the future, and so he's buying an investment property, cause he owned half of it, and I owned half of it. So I'm taking care of everything, I'm finding the tenants, and, so he got half of the cash flow, he got half of the mortgage pay down, and if it goes up in value, he gets half of that. So it's a really good business plan, to pitch to your parents. Other crazy ways, you can borrow the money, to use as a down payment, and so that's like, okay, so we're gonna borrow the down payment. If we need $15,000, that's a lot of money. You can actually go to the bank, get a line of credit, and so let's say we're borrowing $15,000 to put as the down payment. Well, I'm gonna have a payment on that. They're gonna charge me like 9% interest. Okay, well, let's go 10% interest just for easy math. That's $1,500 in interest. Okay, how much is that per month? $120, $125. So instead of living for zero, I'm living for $125 a month.
Also, if like you're not going through the bank, but you're just having the seller, you're financing it to the seller.
Yep.
Like, is there like any brokerage involved in that?
No.
So you just agree with them, okay, so I'm gonna buy this house from you and I'm gonna pay incrementally over a period of time. Okay.
How do you get a job as a mortgage broker?
You go online and you study for 3 months,
That's it? 3 months?
and then you become a mortgage broker.
3 months?
Yeah. Because that's not the hard part. The hard part is,
Building the relationships?
anyone want a mortgage? Anyone want to buy a house?
Oh,
Become a
I
realtor?
can do sales.
Yeah. So it's tough. Like, it's like any business. 80% of them fail, and then another 10% fail 5 years later, and only 10% survive. Just like restaurants, start and then they go down, and then another one starts and then it goes down, and then now we have Earls, and it's there forever.
And like, also, how does having a real estate license help?
You can do this without being a realtor.
Mhm.
You just go to realtor.ca and you go search for legally suited houses, and then we just look at it and go, hey, how much would this rent for? And then I can kind of do my math. So you don't need to be a realtor to do this. The benefit of being a realtor is if I go buy that house and I live there, they pay you a commission, and so you'd make however much, and then maybe that so if my down payment was $15,000, but I buy this house and it's giving me $7,000 when I sell it, I got half my down payment because I was the realtor for it.
Also, one more question.
Yep.
What are good books to read on this, if you know?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes, very good book. Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Probably the most famous one. I like his first one. I like all of them. But yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then Money, People, Deal. The 3 parts to every real estate transaction: the money, the people, and the deal. And that one's Stefan Arnio. Yeah, and then my mom wrote a book. It's really good. It's called The Luckiest Person I Know.
What's your mom's
Money,
name?
People, Deal?
Pardon?
What's your mom's name?
Penny, 1 cent. Penny Kander. Kander.
And what was the name of her book?
The Luckiest Person I Know, which is actually you.
Would you buy franchise?
Franchise? Yeah, I think there's one lady at Home Church Panoka who owns 10 McDonald's.
Wow. Wow. Like, I think AJ should have it, like, stocks in McDonald's.
Yes, why ask a franchise?
Because like, how would, do you know like how that would work out, or do you know much about that?
No, I'm not as familiar with it. They give you like a business plan that says, hey, you're gonna make this much theoretically based on the last ones we've done. Yeah.
Like the franchise will give you a business plan.
So you're basically just buying a lot and then
With the franchise name.
Yeah, and they give you the how to run it and like kind of like a business in a box basically. It's like, hey, here's your manual. Start at the top, do the bottom, and based on our experience, this should make you this much money.
So wouldn't that be better than having real estate? Like, would that be more stable?
So businesses build cash flow, so like income, and then real estate builds net worth. So yes, we still get $700 a month cash flow,
Yeah.
but it costs $350 grand to buy it. If I went and bought a business for $350,000, it might bring in more cash flow. But real estate builds your net worth because I'm paying off the mortgage and I'm getting appreciation. Typically, you don't get appreciation on a business unless you increase the income. That being said,
Like the stock goes up.
well, if I have a business that makes $100,000 and let's say it's worth $100,000, if I can increase the income to $120,000, then the business is worth $120,000. But like, what is it? All billionaires have been made through business. So businesses still do create net worth as well. Do
But
both.
like, is that taxed? The cash flow from.
The cash flow would be, yeah. Yeah, just like if I go to work, I pay tax on my work income, my business income, I would pay tax.
But you wouldn't get taxed from renting.
Good question. So yeah, when I move out of this one and I move to this one, do I pay tax on that $700 a month? You can pay no tax. So last year I paid tax on $5,000 worth of income. I didn't pay tax of $5,000. I paid tax on $5,000. So if I paid 10% on $5,000, I paid $500 in taxes. But I collected this much worth of income, and I only paid $500 in taxes. But we're running out of time, so I will explain taxes a little bit more. Basically, I can just write off my mortgage, my insurance, my utilities, any repairs I do to it, and then I can depreciate the property, which is like every year my house gets older, and so eventually I'm gonna have to tear it down in 179 years. And so the bank lets you say, okay, yeah, it gets older and it loses its value, and then you can kind of offset your income because you have to replace it one day. Good question. So you guys gotta go in 3 minutes. If you ever send someone who wants to buy or sell a house, give you $250.
Oh, wow.
Some income. And then next time, we'll do a Q&A again. We'll talk about how to buy a house for $1,000. We'll talk about how to flip a house and make $30,000. And we'll talk about how to get more free real estate. And we'll talk about how to make $1 million tax-free. And we'll talk about how to get free apartment buildings.
Right.
And we'll talk about Airbnb. So congratulations, you guys now will buy a house, not pay for it yourself, and have other people pay it for you.